So thank you for joining me today, Frankie. As leaders of organizations dedicated to empowering Latino communities, I'm excited to have this conversation about your journey, Hispanic Federation's impact, and the future of our sector. Your work has been truly inspirational, particularly in how you've guided the organization through recent challenges while expanding its outreach and impact. And speaking from impactful journeys, I'd love to start at the beginning of yours. Could you share with us about your journey within the nonprofit sector and public service? What inspired and drove you to serve Latino communities and Latino-led causes from such an early age?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It is interesting question because um, being in nonprofits was never the master plan. I kind of like stumble into this important work through the work that I was doing when I was younger through the arts. I was always interested in the arts, more specifically theater. During my high school years, it was really a source of inspiration and a lot of the community work that I was doing at the time. And then when I went into college, that work continued in Puerto Rico. And I'm talking about back in the 90s in Puerto Rico. And then when I had the opportunity to move to New York to pursue my master's degree, I was looking for an opportunity that will give me some sort of like an opportunity to mix my interest in social sciences and also in theater arts. And I found a fantastic program at NYU called Performance Studies. Had an amazing experience there in New York City, living for the first time in this very, I will say, very inspiring environment. And then the fact is that I was offered the PhD track, which was part of the master plan, but I ran out of money. So I said, what am I going to do now? Do I go back to Puerto Rico? Do I stay in New York for a little bit? And then I said, like, I'm going to stay in New York for, let's say, a couple of years. And if things don't go well, then I am going to just go back to Puerto Rico. But during that time, that's when I was, because of the work in theater troops here in New York City, that's when I was introduced to my first real job in the nonprofit world, which was at the Hispanic Federation.
Wow.
Back in 1998, my first job in nonprofits was formal job was at the Hispanic Federation. They saw in me that I had a passion, that I had a drive, and that I had potential. And I really appreciated that because for the most part, nonprofit organizations in the Latino community are the ones who are giving so many people opportunities in many different communities across the country. So I am part of one of those people.
That's incredible. And I think those are some of the most rewarding journeys where you start off in a certain career path and then you end up in the public or nonprofit sector. I think that's just a really rewarding experience.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that is really important about that for me, it was that the nonprofits constantly are looking for talent and seeing talent and potential in people. Like probably other workplaces will have rejected these Puerto Rican young guy with an accent with a diploma from a who knows what the hell is that type of degree or program or the question that I was getting at the time is how many words per minute can you type? At that time there were typewriters on desk, but the federation, the nonprofits were the ones who said like he has potential.
That's awesome. And I think that's what makes us strong in the nonprofit sector is this diverse pool of talent. That's amazing. So touching on the Hispanic Federation, it was founded in New York City in 1990 by Luis Miranda Jr. and it continues to be one of the largest Latino empowerment and advocacy organizations in the United States. And this year, I hear you all will be celebrating your 35th anniversary, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And like you mentioned, you've been at the organization now since 1998. How have you seen the organization successfully evolve over the years? How have you as a leader evolved alongside Hispanic Federation?
Well, thank you. In 1998, the funny story, funny true story. Luis Miranda was the one who gave me that opportunity at the Hispanic Federation, and during my first staff meeting was when Luis Miranda announced that he was leaving the federation, that he was stepping down as founding president, and that the federation was going to continue doing the amazing work, but under the leadership at that time became Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, our second president of the Hispanic Federation. So during these years, it was very unique history of the organization, because the organization started in 1990 out of the concern that New York City was a federated town, that many different groups had their nonprofit organizations represented by an umbrella organization, but there was not an umbrella organization advocating for more resources and more opportunities for the nonprofit sector to grow in New York City. So in 1990, Luis Miranda and a few other leaders had the vision of creating this umbrella organization. And with a handful of organizations, they started Hispanic Federation of New York City. What was the purpose of the organization? Was very much of providing capacity building, technical assistance, and grant to those direct service providers, health and human service providers in New York City, making sure that those organizations that started in the living room of people concerned about the situation of their neighborhoods, or people that were volunteering and said, we need to formalize these organizations. And they got to the point in which they needed resources and learning more how to run organizations or how to grow organizations. And that was the idea of Hispanic Federation, with the multitude of organizations, nonprofit in New York City. How are we going to make sure that these organizations doing incredible work, incredible unique work in community, was going to be better prepared for going in front of a foundation, or being able to apply for funds, or being able to be a better candidate for government contracts? That was the mission and continues to be the mission of the Hispanic Federation. I'd like to say that we're interested not in your successes, because we know how successful you are. We're interested in your challenges. How can we ensure that you have a stronger board, that you have a good fundraising operation, that your financials are up to date? That is what really intrigued us at the Hispanic Federation. And of course, out of that started people saying, we need the model of the federation in our state, in our area. And from being just a handful of organizations in New York City, today we are in 42 states, DC, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands, with 750 members and partner organizations doing extraordinary work in communities all across the country.
Wow, that's incredible. You touched, I think it's important how you touched on challenges. And when you took over as president and CEO of the Hispanic Federation, you were immediately faced with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm interested to hear, what were some of the key strategies you implemented to sort of navigate the organization through this difficult time?
Well, I want to take a little step back and just share with you and everybody that is listening to us that I've been working at the Hispanic Federation for many years. I left and then came back to the Federation in 2006, and I have been with the organization since then. And then in late 2019, December of 2019, the board offered me the position of president of the Hispanic Federation. And of course, I said no. I didn't want to leave the fun stuff that I was doing at the Federation, working with programs and working with teams and doing many of the work that we were doing. But the board said, Frankie, don't worry. 2020 is going to be an easy piece of cake year. You can do this job with your eyes closed. And after the holiday break, the first time that I have time to, the first opportunity to meet with the leadership team at the Federation was the earthquake in Puerto Rico. And since 2017, we have been working on the recovery of Puerto Rico after Hurricanes Irma and Maria and the flawed response from the federal government to those American citizens that happen to live in the island of Puerto Rico. So we mobilize resources, we mobilize an incredible group of people to help Puerto Rico out of these incredible natural disaster that was affecting my family there and many of the people that I loved. So that means that I become president of the Hispanic Federation, and on my first day, we need to restart all this network of care that we had created in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes to support those affected by the earthquakes. And then a few weeks later, it was the lockdown in New York City. So you can imagine, I was at that moment thinking, it's just like, well, this is not how I planned it, but the organization was ready to act. And what we did was that we took a page of that emergency response in Puerto Rico when local government collapsed and federal government is nowhere to be found. And we used that response to apply it to those affected by the pandemic, because we knew that when these emergencies happen, our organizations are asked to do more when they are already under-resourced and not having all the unlimited funds that they need to do this work, but our organizations will continue doing it. So immediately we start into action, and we started projecting how the pandemic was moving throughout the country, which were the organizations that were going to support those most vulnerable, and we provided to do emergency grants to organizations. Many of these grants were not that big, but they were coming at the right time when people were trying to figure out if they needed equipment to work remotely or protective equipment to protect themselves, or it was that what their communities needed was cash assistance, rental assistance, food assistance. So we were working with the organizations and going around the country, making sure that the organizations were providing us with the solutions. We were not coming and saying, we are going to fund you for something specifically. We were asking them, give us what is your need, and we will support that. And I am proud to say that many organizations credited the Federation's fast response for their survival, because in that moment, they didn't know how to proceed or if they were going to even survive, while other network of care was being built and other sources of emergency response were on their way. So I think that the experience in Puerto Rico after Hurricanes Irma and Maria helped us being an organization that is nimble, that is flexible, and that is fast response organization, making sure that we hear from our members and partners and that we meet them where they need us to meet them. Not unlike other organizations that will take 6, 7 months, 9 months to do a feasibility study and say, well, this is only where we are going to be able to support you. The Federation is other way. We want to hear from our organizations, and that's how we're going to support them.
Absolutely. And I actually can personally speak on that. I have the privilege of leading an organization in South Texas called VIDA, and we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from the Federation during COVID. And it was a tremendous support to us during that time because, like you mentioned, there was a lot of uncertainty and nobody was really willing to take that first step or to try to identify what the needs were. And at that time, We're specifically focused on workforce development, and a lot of, the training were delayed. The classrooms were being closed due to the pandemic restrictions. And so that grant really helped us transition to that digital learning environment. And so thank you so much to you and the entire leadership for really, being an advocate for the Latino communities nationwide, because again, we don't have a presence in New York yet. We primarily focus in South Texas, but yet your support was tremendous to our sustainability at that time. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you. And speaking of sustainability, around the nonprofit sector, I think that's a primary concern all of the time with the limited resources and the high competition. How does the Hispanic Federation ensure that programs are sustainable long term, especially when facing these fluctuating funding sources?
Well, it is the biggest concern for all nonprofits and for us trying to ensure that there are enough sources of funding for the entire network. I must say that constantly it is about telling our story and telling our story about in a way that people really understand the contributions of our community. Right now, unfortunately, there is a lot of a false narrative around our communities, very diverse communities, about who we are as people and what are our aspirations. So we're constantly having to remind people, funders, private companies of the purchasing power of our community, of the economic possibilities and economic mobility and the contributions that our community. So we're constantly having to speak to funders, trying to make sure that they understand that investing in our communities, it is the right kind of investment, that it will have return of investment. I'm not saying that it is not important to talk about the humane argument about helping others and helping those people in need. But at the same time, it is important for us to see us as an element of value, an element of positive change, an element of contribution to the arts, to the society, to the economy of this country. So constantly what we're trying to is to make sure is that people understand that digital skilling for our community, it is good for the country. That supporting education in our community is good for the country. That making sure that these programs are sustainable are good for the country. While we are right now on a few weeks of uncertainty with regards to a new administration and what is going to be the focus of that, all that we have been doing these weeks is to go and advocate in Washington, D.C., with many stakeholders around the country, making sure that companies continue to see the value of diversity, making sure that they don't rescind many of their commitments that they have made to our community and our sector. So I will say that this is an everyday conversation, it's an everyday fight, but that's why the Federation was created, to continue advocating for all the great people and talented people in our sector.
Incredible. And as also a nonprofit leader here at Vida, we are specifically dedicated to expanding workforce and training opportunities to Latino communities. And I've personally experienced the transformative power of strategic partnerships. So our collaborations from educational institutions to industry partners and community organizations have been just so key in helping thousands of individuals achieve economic mobility through our career services. Building on this experience, I'd love to hear your perspective, especially like you mentioned during these challenging times. How can nonprofits collaborate more effectively to advance our shared goals?
I think that the one of the tenements of the Hispanic Federation that is so important is coalition building. Um, many people feel that when there's scarcity of resources, that people need to compete against each other. And what we have seen is that while coalition building is extremely difficult and time consuming, it is an effective way to make the case about the importance of uh, fair resources being distributed in different communities. Um, I feel that when many of the organizations that we represent have worked independently, um, many of them are not as successful as when we come in as a group of 30 organizations in one state, being able to go to the state capital and advocate for fair resources. Or when we're talking about groups of organizations that are right now working on workforce development and being able to go to a private company and say, look at this cohort of organizations, they really deserve an opportunity to all the grants and funds that you have available. So it is important for us always to be able to capture the incredible diversity in our community, the incredible stories, and work collectively. There are sometimes there's going to be we're not going to agree on every single issue, but we can come out as the strong force for all the sector and for all the organizations. And in my experience, it is extremely, extremely powerful. And we have seen it in many different places where sometimes it is impossible, sometimes close to impossible to get resources for organizations. But even when they band together, sometimes even from other parts of the country, the funding and the resources come together. It is always talking about the incredible work of Vida. It is incredible work of those people working in California, in Chicago, in Colorado, in New York, in Puerto Rico, in US Virgin Islands, in Florida. It is important for us to band together. And that is one of the reasons that we continue to work so hard every single day. That is to talk about the members, to talk about the important work that they're doing, and also making sure that people understand the best return on investment is investing in non-for-profits. There is no better return on investment because the communities, the benefit, states, the country, the multiplying effect of investing dollars in these incredible programs like Vida, Workforce Development, and others, it is just incredible. So that is why the Federation exists, and that is why motivate us every single day to tell the story of our members.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, like you mentioned, as one entity or one organization, you're limited as far as your outreach and your impact. But by working with different partners and stakeholders, we can definitely enhance that impact and reach a much bigger audience for sure. And so going off on that, obviously the nonprofit sector is incredibly demanding from what we said, to limited resources, to at times, difficulty with retaining talent or finding talent. What advice do you have for maintaining resilience and motivation in this line of work?
Um, that is a very important question because, as you can see, I consider myself a pandemic time leader, right? It was just before the pandemic, and the we when we went virtual, we were not allowed to go to the office. We were having a series of meetings, and I realized that I was looking at people in the small boxes of many of the employees in a Zoom meeting at a time, and I realized that I couldn't read their emotions. Uh, I felt that I needed to do a wellness check on all of them one by one, being able to talk to them, to call them, and basically ask them, it's like, are you okay? Because while we were very proud that the organization was able to safeguard all our team members during a very difficult time, we knew that they were going through hardship in their families. Some of them lost family members during this very difficult time, or they were worried about other loved ones in their countries of origin or many parts of the United States. So that was a very good lesson for me as a leader to um, actively listen to the team, making sure that we are checking on them, that we are people that are constantly, in many cases, living the same circumstances and the challenges that we're fighting against. These are people that are in community, that have people in community. So for me, is really important that as a leader that is fighting for the well-being, mental and physical well-being of my community, that I take good care of my community. And my community is the members and also the team members, the staff at the Hispanic Federation. So in many cases, what we do is that we make sure that we have that one-on-one contact, making sure that we're checking in with each other. We establish that we're going to have what we call sometimes open mics during our staff meetings, in which people can just share and talk to each other, and making sure that we preserve that idea that while we can be working remotely or hybrid or in person, that there is no other way to connect with each other and be a better team if we don't care about each other and listen to each other. And another thing that I think that was really important for morale and in understanding the needs of everybody is that some of the most important decisions that we have made since I became president of the Hispanic Federation has been made in task forces. A task force created within the organization, and it's like, this is not what Frankie wants. We want to know that if we're going to have a hybrid model, it's because we're listening to people that have caretaking issues, or people that are having anxiety taking mass transportation, or that there are challenges, economic challenges, because the way that the family has reconfigured after the pandemic is very different from before. So I think that that is somebody recently called that, and I said, we're doing that, but I didn't have that term. It called it radical listening, making sure that you are listening and making sure that there is change associated to that. And I think that that has been a very good opportunity to not only make sure that everybody's okay at the Hispanic Federation, but also ensuring that people retaining people at the Federation, and also making sure that their well-being is taken care of.
I love that. I definitely agree, when it comes to leadership to, be able to express that compassion and that empathy towards others, especially your team and the members of the community that you're serving in. It really builds the culture, not only in the workplace, but, in our community. And I couldn't agree more. As we look into the future, obviously there's so many emerging trends and priorities and even challenges that will continue to impact our sector. What are some of those emerging trends or challenges that you believe will be instrumental in impacting nonprofit organizations, specifically working with Latinos?
I think that right now we are in a very critical moment in which it is important for all of us to reaffirm our potential as community and for the future of this country. As we mentioned before, there is a false narrative whether or not our community is important or contributing or participating, or even if there is a reason why we should be part of the society, of the fabric of this country. And what I feel is that there's going to be very soon a recalibration of the environment with regards to everything that is happening really fast, changing environment since the beginning of the year. Not I don't want to get into politics or anything, but there's a lot of transition that is happening right now. And what we want to ensure is that we continue to elevate the importance of our community and the contributions of our community. It's a very well-known fact that if we were just a country, an independent country, just the Latino community, we will be the fifth GDP in the world. It's an economy, it's in entire contributions. It is the power of our people and how people in this country want to be part of these changing environment and contributing positively to our reality. So what I feel right now is that we need to reclaim that. We need to reclaim our own narrative and making sure that people understand that we are part of the incredible progress that this country is making every single day. Sometimes days seems to be very doom and gloom, but the fact is that people are working every single day. That Latinas are the number one driver of opening new businesses in this country, that we continue to be a force to reckon with, and we need to continue doing that. Um, Diversity is the most important aspect of the work that any company, any government, any nonprofit, any institution can have. It is the way in which we enrich the experiences of many different people and that we learn from each other. So while right now the trend may be that we're walking away from diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think that at some point we're going to realize and autocorrect that and see again the value of it, because the more diverse your team is, the more diverse your workforce is, the more and more effective you will be able to just move forward towards the future.
Absolutely. And definitely, like you mentioned, we're such a impactful community just within the United States that I feel looking into the future, prioritizing that unity among our Latino communities, because like it's often said, in unity, there's power. And so by, staying with each other and working together, I think we can definitely amplify that voice. And speaking of elevating our communities, Hispanic Executive just rolled out their visibility issue at the start of the year, specifically focusing on LGBTQ plus Latino storytellers in Hollywood who artfully share what it means to be queer and Latino. Recognizing their work and the LGBT community is more important than ever, especially during the wake of all that's going on today. And I'd love to ask you, how has your leadership shaped the organization's efforts to amplify these voices and stories? What progress have you seen, but also what challenges do you believe remain in advancing the rights and visibility for this community?
Well, the fact that I am the first openly gay queer leader of the Hispanic Federation has been incredibly important for the organization. Before I was president of the Hispanic Federation, I was working at the Hispanic Federation, and the issue of marriage equality was being debated. I was able to be out in as part of the team of the Hispanic Federation, and I was living in a situation in which my life partner was living in Brazil because he couldn't come back to the United States because he got a 10-year penalty, because when we were together in the early 2000s, there was no marriage equality, so we could not adjust his status because we were same sex. It was a very important conversation to have because the Federation at the time have always been working with issues around HIV/AIDS and treatment. But when it comes to policy and advocacy for the LGBTQ community, my story and my situation with my life partner at the time shaped the idea that with this diverse voice, with Frankie telling his story, the organization better understood and was better equipped to be part of this dialogue and be part of the advocacy. In fact, when marriage equality was going to be heard at the Supreme Court as a case, I was allowed by the Federation to be a spokesperson, especially for Spanish language media, to really understand that marriage equality was not just about marriage, it's about family reunification, that this was an issue about love, about people that care about each other, that this was about fairness and equity. And when we talked about those terms, many people in our community said, I get it. Yes, this is unfair. So going back to this idea of diversity and having environments where many different voices are welcome and that you incorporate that made us a better organization. With my voice at the time, I was able to just inspire other members of the Hispanic Federation to be part of these uh, um, incredible accomplishment in our country moving forward when it comes to civil rights. So when I am as the helm of the Hispanic Federation as president now, I'm always really looking to hear from those voices that are very different than mine, because I will be a better leader and I will be able to understand issues in a very different way than if we were just a homogeneous organizations with people that think the same and that look the same and that speak the same. So I always value so much the opportunity that the organization created this environment so early on in my career that I could be out, that I could speak about my truth and my reality, that they took care of making sure that I was going to be equipped to be able to make my case about my life story. Today, my husband and I were married. He's an American citizen. We have been together for close to 25 years, but this was part of shaping an organization that may have not thought about it if it wasn't because these voices were allowed to be part of the conversation. So I am very, very much aware of the privilege that I had in my earlier career to be in an environment like that. And I aspire to make sure that we continue to have that type of environment where everybody can express themselves and that can help us shape what is the next future advocacy agenda for the Hispanic Federation, taking into consideration as many diverse voices as possible.
That's incredible. Well, congratulations on that incredible progress and being that voice for so many of us in our community. I feel like when you stand up for something, it's truly admiring, but I believe that when you have that personal lived experience, it's just so much more powerful. So thank you. And with that, I would like to ask you our final question, which is, what has been the most rewarding aspect for you as CEO, and what advice would you give to aspiring leaders in the nonprofit or philanthropic space?
Um, it is very moving to me when I go to when I am invited to speak at a um, forum or space, and I start by saying, "Hello, I'm Frankie Miranda, President and CEO of the Hispanic Federation. I'm the first openly queer president of the Hispanic Federation." I have been able to share uh, very important messages, data, sharing knowledge, practices. But when a parent, when somebody comes to me and said, I have a gay son, and seeing you up there makes me feel that he will have a bright future. Or young people saying, oh my God, I'm Latino, I'm queer, and now I feel seen in an environment like this. Um, I was I was not really ready or aware that that was going to be some of the most moving moments when people come up to me and said, thank you for speaking your truth and not being afraid. Because in many different environments, people will be hesitant in just being too open or too human or too raw. Um, so that has been for me a very humbling experience. And my advice to nonprofit leaders and any leaders, especially in Hispanic community, is that we sometimes have to fit certain mold, and people sometimes judge us because of our accent or the way that we looked, or whether or not we went to the right school, or whether we went to school. And I think that I have come to learn that being our true self in this environment is what makes us special and what makes us inspiring to others. If we're just cookie cutter and we just try to be like others, we would not be able to just inspire people the way that we can do it right now. And sometimes we're going to maybe use the wrong verb, and maybe your accent comes through, or sometimes you're not going to be looking in the way that you probably want everybody else to see you. But at the end of the day, it is what it's going to make you the best leader that you can be.
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, it's what makes us authentic and really valuable, not only for our organizations, but for the community as well. Frankie, thank you again so much for sharing all your wonderful insights and your experiences with us today. I just want to say I personally admire your leadership at Hispanic Federation tremendously. I think you have an incredible vision, and your resilience and authentic leadership has just transformed so many of our communities beyond New York, especially for us here in South Texas. And so just wanted to let you know we are extremely grateful for everything that you're doing at the organization. And is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience about the future of Latino-led organizations and their role in advancing equity and opportunity?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, and for sharing the way that we have worked together as well with our audience. But at the end of the day, we just need to um, stay strong. Uh, we are going through challenging times as community, but we are going to get through this. And as a other very wise leader said to me recently, we have been through this before. So while there's going to be peaks and valleys, what we need to continue to do is to stay strong and to stay united.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.